everybody, this is Danny
and Wanda
from Deep South Homestead. We're going to continue on with our path to financial freedom.
Yeah, our path to financial freedom.
Today's video is going to be a little bit different than the rest of them because this is going to be a little bit more difficult for us because we're actually moving into the, I guess the word would be some of the harder times of our life.
Yeah, kind of some people say midlife crisis.
Well, it could be called that, I'm sure. But I gotta get a drink of water. I'll be like J0. Holy crap, that's good water.
Yeah.
Just to put a little light on the subject. But yeah, we are moving into some of the more difficult times in Wanda and Mine's life. We're going to be moving into our mid-40s. From 40 years up, let's say that.
Yeah.
Which should be some of your more secure times in life.
It should be a time when you've gotten past your teenage years, you've gotten past the kids in diapers and all,
teenage
and you
years,
should have a little sense about financial freedoms and things like that.
By this time, you should be more thinking about retirement, setting up your financial futures. Kids pretty much out of school, or maybe get close to being out of school.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was hoping to be able to retire at 47 to 49, somewhere in that area. And life happens, guys, and it's not always what we think it'll be. Because at 40 years old, I ended up, after being married for 20 years, going through a divorce. And it was not something that I planned. It was not something that, it just happened. Let me just leave it at that. Life just happened. After going through a divorce, a lot of things in my life changed. I was completely out of debt, except for I had just bought a brand new truck to go back and forth to work in, and got myself a note, which is something I hadn't had in many years. And going through a divorce, it shoved me into child support. It fixed it where I freely walked away from the home that was paid for, and did not mind it, because I wanted my children to know that they had a roof over their head that was paid for. And there I had to find another place to live, which meant I had land. So I just moved on another piece of my property, and I had to purchase a mobile home, which meant I had to have a down payment. I had another monthly note now. I had insurance on that note. I had a new truck. I had to borrow money to put a well down because I don't believe in community water. I had to borrow money to put a septic system in. There was a lot of borrowing money at this time. And I went from being virtually out of debt to owing an astronomical amount of money for me.
These things just bombard you in a heartbeat.
They overtake you.
And you were back into I gotta work
mode big time. And most guys and ladies, once they go through a divorce and have to go through this, because it cost me a lot of money to get out of it, never recover financially. And I knew that from having counseled with different people who had been through this in my own life. I knew that most people never recover from it financially. And I wanted to be the exception to the rule on this one, because I knew going into it what I was facing. I knew there was going to be a lot of years of hard work. I knew I didn't want to live in a trailer the rest of my life. I knew I wanted a home, so I immediately started drawing my house plans. I would sit in the trailer night after night. It was very primitive setup. I had couple of glasses, a couple of plates. You know, the man cave thing. I slept on an air mattress. It was a nice trailer. It was brand new, but it just, when you've lived in a house all your life, predominantly, and then you go to live in a trailer.
And you walked away with very little.
I walked away with, I kept my cattle and stuff like that, my cattle trailers and my tools to make a living with, stuff like that.
But household,
I walked away from everything. I had no pots, no pans, I had no skillets, I had nothing, The new trailer had the stove and everything in it, but when you have nothing to cook with, so I ended up going to a dollar store, buying most of my stuff to cook with. And guys, I still made it.
Yeah. And I had almost a similar experience, a little different, but similar. After 27 years of marriage, I walked away. I had a house that was paid for and had been paid for a long time. And the marriage was gone, but I was on my own, and I was allowed to stay in the house for 3 years. So I still had no note the first 3 years, but I had to make my own living. I had no support, so I worked, I made my own living, and in order to work, I had to have a vehicle, and I never owned my own vehicle. It always been our vehicle, and never really had something that belonged to me. So I bought my vehicle, so I had a note, and I had insurance, and I had a cell phone, and things like that, and gas, because I had to go back and forth. My work was 30 minutes away. And for 3 years, that's how I lived, in a house that was paid for, but still I didn't see the need to save money at that time. I wasn't seeing the future. I saved enough that eventually I had to move out of the house. And when I did, I left virtually like Danny with very little. I took my clothes, a few personal items, a few dishes, and moved into an apartment. Well, there you go with the apartment.
There you
I
go.
had to pay the bills. I had the power. But I mean, I had all these bills. I lived in town right next to my work because I was the manager of an apartment building, so I moved into one of our own apartments, but I still had to pay my bills, and I had to pay for the rent. And while I was living there for 2 years before I met Danny, I ended up getting a gym membership. I was living it up. I was at the point that where Danny was looking to the future to build a house and stuff, I was gung-ho doing absolutely none of that. I was spending money the way I wanted to spend it. I wasn't blowing money,
Right.
but if I wanted to go out and eat every night of the week, I went out and ate because it was me. And it feels funny to sit in a restaurant by yourself and order a 3-course meal.
Yes, it does, because I've felt that same exact feeling. You're sitting there looking around all these other people, and they got their wives and all, and you're sitting there by yourself, and you're thinking, this is kind of lonely.
Yeah, but I got used to it, and I would go in restaurants and eat, and I would do all this stuff, and I literally would shop, but I'd buy things on sale. My frugal side come out.
Yeah, that starts coming back.
But yet I spent money I didn't need because I didn't see the need to save. And so for 2 years living in an apartment here, I had all my bills, but I was the single girl just enjoying it. I wasn't dating. I was just doing what I wanted to do.
Well, yeah, and that is a point there that Wanda has brought out. We come to a point in life where it seems like, and I came to that point, I thought to myself, well, the dream of retiring is now over. And so I was like, what the heck? Mm-hmm. Just live. And
it was like a midlife crisis.
It is. It's like a midlife crisis. It's like, okay, my feet's been jerked out from under me now, and it's just going to be what it's going to be from here on out. I'm not ever going to be where I was. And I had that mentality myself. And I went through it for a little while, but then I met a lady, and she and I ended up getting married. And we had a real good marriage. I'm not going to say it was bad because it was really good marriage. And then, you know, as time progressed, we talked about building a house. And I'm like, okay, I'm in the construction business. This is what I do. I told her, I said, this is no big deal. I'll build us a house. Not worried about it. There again, I had these thoughts in my head of a little small, I call 1,500 square feet a small house, you know, around 1,500 square foot wood frame house. A lot of rustic look to it. I had all these thoughts in my mind. I said, okay, yes, no problem. We can build this thing. I'll throw it up in a few months and, you know, I'll still be debt free just about. We'll just pay for the material along as we go. And no, she had other plans, you know. I mean, she told me, she said, well, now, hold on. I'm in this picture too. And we had just sold her home up in central part of the state. And she said, you know, I've always wanted a Victorian home. Well, me, I built fine homes for a living. And I was kind of like, whoa, we're talking about a lot of money now. And she goes, well, I want a Victorian home. I was like, well, I kind of like country. So we came to an agreement of a country Victorian. I went to my office and I sat down and I drew the prints and we discussed about a lot of things in the house and finalized it. And once I had it finalized,
this is the house.
This is the house that you see at Deep South Homestead is that home.
And it took you how many years?
I started in 2001 building it, and I finished it in 2004. The house you see here at Deep South Homestead, I built right by myself.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that was a financial burden, but it was also a time and a stress where it put you at
I had to make a living.
Yeah.
I had to make money to pay all these bills with that I just accumulated. And I had to build a home. And I was trying to pay cash for it as I went. But it came to a point in 2000, the first part of 2004, I realized that if I kept going on this road, you know, I was going to be several more years finishing this house. And I looked at my wife and I told her, I said, look, I own all this land. If we're ever going to finish this house, the only way we're going to do it within any kind of a reasonable length of time is to sell the land and pay for the house. So we put the land up for sale, which we sold it to a neighbor, and it sold instantly. And we was able to finish the house. And you have to understand, at 40 years old, I went from owing nothing to 2004 almost being $250,000 in debt. Within 7 years of being frugal, not going out to eat, not going to the movies, not doing anything but sitting right here at this house, no vacations, no nothing. For 7 years, I paid cash for everything, and I paid my debts off. So, at, I'm going to say around 2009, I think it was 2009, I was back being debt free. I had paid my land off.
And actually saving a little money.
And actually saving money then, because yeah, at that point I done started putting money back in saving again. And, but cancer had struck. Yeah. And even though we had some insurance, insurance doesn't cover everything.
And you were trying to do the natural way, which if you go the natural way with juicing and keeping fresh veggies and
the organic methods,
yes.
All that kind of stuff, going to the health food stores, getting everything. We were treating this cancer, even though she was taking the chemo treatments, we were still doing the organic, natural, homeopathic ways. I was spending anywhere between $200 and $300 a week just in a health food store, and which was no problem because I was making good money. Didn't mind doing it at all, but before it was over, by 2011, she passed away in 2011, 3 days after my birthday. And people ask, why is July so hard for you? That's why July is so hard for me. This is going to sound really weird. I have an anniversary for marriage.
To me.
To Wanda.
I brought some happiness
She brought the happiness to the month for me. I have a birthday in July, and I have the loss of my wife in July.
All in a week.
All within 1 week, or a week and a half. So July for me is kind of a love-hate month, and it's really tough. And but I look back, and what I realize out of this is this: just because life kicks your feet out from under you,
numerous times.
I mean, divorce, being out of debt, going back in debt, remarriage, death, all this kind of stuff, remarriage again. There can still be a silver lining to the cloud, and Wanda is that silver lining for me, y'all. And that's what makes life. Right now, I have a great life right now, and I am very thankful for it.
Yeah, and for me, it was living in an apartment, thinking I didn't need a guy, that, I was living the life that I wanted to live by myself, thinking that this is the way it should be. I had a good job. At the point I moved into the city, I had a good job. I was close, convenient to everything. Money seemed to be no issue, and I was just doing what I wanted to do. And all of a sudden, things changed, and I had stress issues from every direction, and that brought me to a point of my health failing.
Yeah.
And them even thinking that I needed a blood transfusion, and I was fighting it big time, but I pulled through that, and I got past it. I decided, hey, I'm 50 years old. I want to go to college. So I went I went to college. I had quit my job, and I went to college, and I enjoyed being around those young people. It was awesome. I was having the time of my life, but I was still missing something. I still wanted something, and I didn't know what I wanted, but I didn't think it was a man either, because I'd had enough of men. But I wanted somebody to talk to, and all my friends were always busy. They had their husbands, they had their jobs, They had things to do. And so I went online on Christian Mingle and was only on there a couple of weeks, messaged Danny right off the bat, and then decided he was not who I wanted because he was living with his mom and dad, and that was not something I wanted to hear.
Yeah, it was.
And so financially, I was at a good place, I thought, except I had quit my job, and then things were starting to pile in. And once I quit my job, my stash was going away. I'd saved enough money that I thought I could live a while, but I was living and spending it. And when I met Danny, I was on the verge of having to make the decision. Do I move out of my apartment? I had been looking for a job, and at 50 years old, they just don't hire.
You just don't get a job at 50 years old. Not here anyway.
Yeah, you have to really, I was overqualified for a lot of things and underqualified for others. And it was really hard. And when I met Danny, I was at that point of I need to do something. And that's when my life needed to make a huge change. And financially, I was at the point I had to make a lot of decisions because I was broke. I mean, I had a little bit of money, but it wasn't going to last long. I had bills galore, and I needed to make a change. And that's when I met Danny. And
and she brought out some good points there. In 2009, I was sitting there thinking, my health failed me, and I had to shut my companies down, and I had to come home and had to take care of a sick wife who had cancer because I had nobody to help me. And when you have to shut a company down and you have to look at your employees and you have to tell them, look, I'm gonna have to lay y'all off. I mean, they've got families. I mean, stuff like that, that's kind of hard, or it was for me. It was kind of hard for me to tell my guys that because they were really good guys I had working for me. And, you know, even though I had a pretty good savings, it didn't take long being out of work and going through doctors and cancer and stuff like that to dwindle that savings down. And you know, after my wife passed away, you know, Wanda made a comment when she met me. I was living with my parents. Well, I still had my home here. I still had my land and everything. And I had a heart condition happen. And my parents lived about a mile and a half from the hospital. And the doctors had told me it'd be better if I could live in town for a while, closer to the hospital. And my mom and them lived right down the road. So Mom told me, said, you know, your dad's falling a lot. I can't drive anymore. If you could just kind of stay with us and help us get the house kind of handicap accessible and stuff like that, we would appreciate it. Just give us a hand and you'd be closer to the doctor. And that's what happened. I moved out there and helped take care of them for a couple of years. And that was one of the things that Wanda, when she first looked.
I didn't know that. He just made the statement, I'm having to take care of my mom and my dad. And
she wasn't really keen on a guy who was taking care of his parents. You know?
I didn't want kids and I didn't want parents. I didn't want a man that still had kids at home.
Right.
That I had to deal with that. And I didn't want a man that had people that was dependent on him. I was selfish. I wanted somebody that I wanted by myself. So that's.
But you know, once we talked and she realized what was going on,
it was different.
It was completely different. And like she said, we did meet, both of us was on Christian Mingle at the time. And we did meet on Christian Mingle.
And at that point, you had very little money at that point.
I had no job. I had no income. I had no self-support at all. I mean, literally. I was helping my brother mow yards because he had a lawn care business, and every now and then I'd help him do landscaping. I would help him mow and stuff like that, just to make a few bucks to give me some gas money to, you know, come back and forth, check on my place here. And I had some chickens out here then. I still had some goats, and I gave the goats away, and I sold the chickens, and virtually I had no animals left on the farm, so had no reason to, you know, matter of fact, I had put this place up for sale and actually had a buyer for it when Wanda and I got together.
And the funny thing is, he was actually going to add on to his mom and dad's house.
I had talked about, you know, my mom and them about maybe adding on to their home and being able to stay there to help finish taking care of them. But once I met Wanda, I realized that God had another road for my life, and that she and I one day may look forward to getting married.
Yeah, we kind of want to stop it there today because we want to talk about our first couple of years, how we made it with virtually no money and all, but our 40s to 50 were pretty.
They were pretty rough.
Yeah, they
were trying. Let me put it, they were challenging and they were trying.
They had their good moments. We had lots of good moments. I have lots of good memories.
I do too.
And but they are very trying, and we got through them.
We got through them.
And God blessed us 100% when Danny and I met. We both knew it was of God, and we both knew that He was straightening our lives out through our 40s, headed us toward.
40s was actually a growing time for us.
Yes, I think
as hard as it was a growing time.
And we learned that I learned money didn't mean a thing. I had it, but it wasn't making me happy in my 40s. I was still hunting something. Yeah, I guess I could say the same thing. In my 40s, I made lots of money, and yet in the end, it was just emptiness. You know, it didn't fix the problem. Yeah, it didn't fix the problems. Thank y'all for watching us on our video of our path to financial freedom. As we've just shared with you our 40s to our 50 year of our life.
the next video, we're going to get into Wanda and I's actually meeting and how we spent some of our time in our earlier years. So,
how we financially handled the first couple of years.
First couple of years of our marriage. So thank y'all from Deep South Homestead.